to find out what's been going on in the project, and importantly, what might be coming down the road as well, and to introduce it, none other than the Asterisk project lead, Mr. Matt Fredrickson.
Waiting out this far into the conference. I know that as these things go, usually the last day of the conference is the hard day. Usually you're a little bit tired. Typically the day after the conference party, and so everybody woke up a little bit late, stayed up a little bit late. And so the fact that you persevered and stayed this long, I'm very grateful that you felt it was important enough to come see. And hopefully I can share with you a few things and tell you a little bit about where Asterisk has come this last year and where it's going. So can somebody get my slides? All right, thank you. So I wanted to kind of set a new tone with Asterisk 15. There are some things that are drastically different in it that have taken us a very long time to change. Some things that we have not done and we've delayed doing for a very long time that kind of give it a lot more opportunity and a lot more future in terms of the new world. Before I get too far into that, just to introduce myself, for those of you who are not aware, I'm Matt Jordan, who was the previous Asterisk project lead, and he was here last year introducing everybody. He was moved to the CTO role in the company, and with that, I was asked to take over management of the Asterisk project. And for me, that was a great honor. And in a lot of ways, since I've worked on Asterisk over the years in various capacities, it was like coming home as well. I've worked in various software developmental capacities at Digium. I've helped with some of the hardware design and driver development. I've maintained the Asterisk ISDN stack, so for any of you that bought Digium ISDN cards and use them, I thank you very much personally. And for those of you as we've corrected bugs and things like that, and you worked with me directly, I'm grateful for your patience and allowing me to help you to fix your problems, because I got to do that on occasion as well. I realized at some point that Asterisk, it would be beneficial for Asterisk to be able to talk some of the more inter-network protocols, and I realized that there wasn't an SS7 stack for Asterisk, so I decided to write one of those as well. And then for a few years after that, I worked on some WebRTC related initiatives at Digium, and that's kind of what brought me, after that, that's kind of where I got pulled in to work with the Asterisk project. Before I go further, I'd like to introduce some of the people up here. Typically what we do at the end of this session is we have some of the Asterisk core development team on the stage, and we share a little bit about the Asterisk project, and then afterwards we have a question and answer that involves some of the core developers. And so I'd like each one of you to introduce yourselves and tell a bit more about you and how long you've used Asterisk. And we'll start with Sean here.
Hi, Sean Bright. I'm the CTO of Colp. I've been an Asterisk user since 2005, and I've been a community developer since 2007. That's really all I have.
My name's Joshua Colp. I've been at Digium for a little over 11 years now, but I've been in the Asterisk community probably 13 or 14. So I basically work on Asterisk at Digium, touch a lot of things in it, WebRTC, SIP, media layer, core stuff, audio hooks, mix monitor, you name it, I've probably dabbled in it at some point to hopefully improve it for you guys.
My name is Kevin Harwell, and I have been working with Asterisk for, I guess, about 4.5, 5 years or so. That is when I started at Digium back in 2012.
Thank you, Kevin. Just as a special note, Sean Bright hasn't been here in a few years, and Sean, he is a very, very regular contributor to the point where, I like to think of contribution to open source comes in a couple different flavors at the developmental level. Obviously, there's a lot of different layers there. You can contribute in a lot of different ways, but at a developmental level, oftentimes there are contributions that come in and they're like, I love your open source project that you have, and I just need to do this one extra thing for my specific application, and here's a patch for it, right? And so you try to get through the contribution process and put it in, and then you go and utilize it, and usually that's kind of the end of the relationship. Sean has been very active and involved to the point where he hasn't just contributed his own patches, but he goes and he works on the bug tracker. He'll fix other people's bugs. he helps shepherd new contributions in, and if there are coding guideline things that need to be fixed. So truly above and beyond type effort as a developer. And so we are very, very grateful to have him here with us. And that's all the dirty work, right? Because it's really fun changing Asterisk to make it work in some scenario. But really the hard work and where you see the real metal and the different people that come in are the ones that regularly contribute like that. And so just to take a momentary diversion, we wanted to kind of give him, in the spirit of our Asterisk 15 changes, here is a Raspberry Pi kit that has some fun things on it. It has a Raspberry Pi video camera, and also a Raspberry Pi display.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and that's, I think David Duffett found that. He's usually responsible for finding really good swag and really fun prizes and stuff like that.
Awesome. Thank you. Should I build this now, or should I not put this together?
Multitasking.
Yeah. All right, so with that, I'm going to try to get a little bit started. And to begin, I just was thinking about how I wanted to present the information that I have. And I wanted to preset some of the things that I'm going to talk about with a little bit of history. For those of you, who actually in here, is there anybody here that utilized Asterisk 1.0 or Asterisk 1.0? Or earlier, yeah. So there's a few people here. Oh, there's more than a few. That's pretty cool. Actually, that's really cool, given how long we've been doing this. So 1.0 was the first major release. It had ISDN support, had an H323 channel driver, MGCP, AGI support. It had a SIP channel driver as well, and some really, really neat things. And it was sort of the gateway for a lot of people into the world of telephony, which was traditionally very closed and very difficult to get in without proprietary hardware or relationships. So that was a really awesome release. And we had a few more releases since then. 1.6 had a few notable things in it. We added wideband audio support. There were many other contributions along the path, but I was trying to pick some prominent points of interest. And I couldn't not put in SS7 support because I worked on it. So that was a little bit of a selfish addition there. And that went into Asterisk 1.6. There was some time that passed, and Asterisk 11 was released, and that was the beginnings of WebRTC support that was added to ShenSip. So that was kind of a cool milestone. Asterisk 12 was the first major release that included our new PJ-SIP channel driver, which was an effort to be able to work better with the SIP protocol from a developmental perspective. ShenSip had gotten to the point where it was very difficult to make changes to due to fundamental limitations in its architecture, and so we decided to take a step back and take a new approach with it. Asterisk 13 was released, and it included support for the REST interface, ARI, and for some reason I put PJ-SIP on here, and I should have checked that. First major LTS with a PJ-SIP, with the PJ-SIP implementation, we'll say that. And Asterisk 14 had more ARI additions, more PJ-SIP additions, and the introduction of an asynchronous DNS API internally. So what about Asterisk 15? And that's what I really want to talk about today. I would say if there's any theme for Asterisk 15 in terms of what's new, it's in the path of video and in the direction of video. So there's kind of been a historical problem with video in the industry, and many of you are aware of this, and that most of the clients have been very simple. So SIP video phones and SIP desktop clients, traditionally have been limited to single stream video. The experience has been sort of bound by that box. And I think this traces back to historical video support in the ISDN network and how they implemented that. And that's kind of how it all worked. And so you had some really, I'm not saying this is the only case, you had some really premium and rich clients that provided pretty awesome experiences that didn't necessarily conform to those limitations, like Cisco telepresence units and some fancy Tamberg solutions and things like that. But generally, they were very expensive and not easily obtainable. So video MCU was considered the de facto standard for how you provided multi-user video conferencing. And MCU is sort of a Brady Bunch, so insert Brady Bunch image here where you see everybody across the screen. and you see it like a big checkerboard or whatever, just people on there. There are some problems with the MCU approach in that it requires a lot of CPU power for the MCU box. It has to take all the video streams that come in, and it has to decode them. It has to mix them all together, and it has to shrink them and mix them together, and then it has to re-encode that stream to send it out to the participants. And File put it this way, he said, video is expensive, yo. And yeah, sorry. So Asterisk 15 does video better than any prior version of Asterisk, and that was one of our big goals. We had to make some considerable changes to the core of Asterisk in order to get it to the point where we needed it to be for some of our goals. We needed to undo a few historical limitations in Asterisk. So in Asterisk, historically, there's an assumption about a call that there's a single audio stream and a single video stream. And we had to unbound a lot of the core assumptions that were made based on this limitation. We also added support to allow dynamic renegotiation from an application perspective of call attributes. To some extent, we could do this, like in call reinvites and things like that, but this is at a lot more detailed level, where you can change media level attributes and things like that on an up and running call and utilize that power within Asterisk applications, like generic applications. And we added support to the conference bridge application to be a generic SFU, a selective forwarding unit, for those who are not familiar with that. When I say the word SFU, how many of you know what that means? Raise of hands. So maybe half the audience, a third of the audience. So that essentially means that instead of having everybody send their streams to a box or some kind of mixer and have them mixed and then have that mixed representation come back to you, and that representation is defined by that central box. All video streams from all participants, and if you're running an SFU, all video streams from all participants go to all clients. And there are some advantages to doing that. I have a little picture here of how that works. You can see Asterisk in the middle. You might have a few browsers. If you can see around the podium, there's 3 browsers here. And browser A sends its video to Asterisk, browser B sends its video to Asterisk, and browser C sends its video. And then each browser gets the other 2 streams from the other browsers. So you can see everybody. So what can you get with that? Well, you have a lot of power. You can build really rich clients that way. You don't have to conform the conferencing experience to what that middle box can give you in terms of presentation. For example, if you're in a presentation of some sort and you'd rather focus on the presenter or a particular participant for a period of time, you as a client can make that choice. You can say, there's something that this other participant's talking about or showing that I really want to see, even though maybe the presenter of the conference doesn't leave that as a default view or something like that. The client can choose. So focus can be controlled. If a presenter is presenting and they're showing their face or whatever, and you're still trying to take notes, you're still trying to catch up from what he's saying and take notes, you can instead select his slides and make that the big thing that you're looking at and be able to see those slides better. So, in addition to that, and this is kind of nice from an infrastructure perspective, it uses much less CPU because you don't have to do heavy video decoding and re-encoding on that central box. And so it doesn't stress the central box as much. So that's kind of why we picked the SFU path. We wanted to take a few minutes. Raise your hand if you have not seen a demonstration, because we've had a couple opportunities to see it. At DevCon, we showed it off a little bit, and there was a presentation by Josh and Kevin about it. Raise your hand if you haven't seen the demonstration yet of what we've done. OK, so there's enough people probably to go forward with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up our client that we built. And be kind, because it was a bunch of C developers, backend C developers that built this client. And so as far as the UI experience goes, I'm thinking it was pretty good for us. So here you go. Here's a pile of different people in a video conference. And this is all being sent through Asterisk. This is all using new browser technologies that allow us to do that. There were a number of new browser technologies that we had to develop to make this all work. And it's pretty cool. And you see it this way, but you can imagine there's a lot of things you could do with this technology, right? It's not just about people. It's about, for example, if you had a bunch of security cameras that you wanted to view at the same time, you're monitoring security for your building or for your office and things like that, you can provide an experience where you can see them all. You can select one in particular. You might have a Jared Smith in the audience that wants to call in. Hey, Jared. Or there could be, Josh, do you guys have the?
Yeah, you want me to press it?
Yeah, or you might have devices like the.
Someone needs to drop that.
I can drop it.
Okay.
Bye.
You might have fun devices like a video doorbell or something like that that you may want to attach to.
This is a TCOM doorbell, by the way.
That's right. It's one that TCOM let us use.
You got the mute ready?
Yeah. Oh, someone got in beforehand.
Someone got in. Oh, no, there it is.
Yay, 1, 2.
There we go. And so you can attach fun SIP-based IoT type video-enabled devices like the TCOM doorbell. And so there are a lot of different things that you could imagine doing with this. And so what this really brings is the interconnectivity that Asterisk allows you to have with a lot of existing devices and things like that, and bring it forward to the new world with new world devices like browsers and things like that. So that's kind of one of the compelling new features that we kind of bring to the table. So with that, I'm going to move forward. Actually, I should probably shut this off so my CPU doesn't catch on fire or anything like that. I want to, this is kind of a corny question, but really, this is really what it comes back to is, we built this really cool technology, and I want you to think about what do you think you could build with this today, and think about what new markets you can attack with this, what new fun technologies does this allow you to build with this as a basis. Sounds like somebody's enjoying it still out there. All right, so with that, I want to interject something really quick to talk about Asterisk 15. So there are no surprises about this. Asterisk 15 will not be an LTS. Typically, the odd releases of Asterisk are LTS releases, but due to some of the major changes that we made with Asterisk 15 and some of the things that we imagine going into Asterisk 15, we have a number of things in the pipeline that are probably going to rapidly change in Asterisk 15. We concluded that we should probably skip 15 as an LTS and wait for 16 to release an LTS. And obviously, this is going to impact some people some people won't mind, some people it's impact in hard ways, and we regret the inconvenience that causes. It was a difficult decision to make. I want to talk a little about the contribution statistics for Asterisk 15. Since Asterisk 14 was released, we have made 924 different commits to Asterisk 15, which is more than 1 per day. It's more than 2 per day, and it's almost 3 per day. And so that's a huge number of contributions that have come in. According to those commits, there have been 82 different contributors. And from a general project perspective, because Asterisk 13 and 14, we allow new contributions to go in as well. If you look at all the branches that receive contributions, 13, 14, and 15, there have been 2,400 different code reviews up on our Garrett site since last year. And that's pretty amazing from a project perspective. Some of the top contributors, I like to go through this to give some name recognition to the people that actually work really hard on Asterisk and try to add features and functionality and take care of it. The top one outside of Digium is actually Sean Bright. So it's very appropriate that he's up here. The next one was Corey Farrell, Alexander Troud, Alexei Gradinari, Safir Cohen, who usually comes to Astricon, Tori Searle. Are you here? Tori, you want to stand up? Thanks, Tori. And Walter Dokies. And actually, there were a number more, but I had to cut off the long tail at some point. And so I'd just like everybody to give a round of applause for everybody that has worked to contribute to Asterisk. And not only are developmental level contributions valuable, but also all the other different ways. Some of you aren't developers, some of you are users, some of you are integrators, but all the other different ways that I didn't specifically recognize, many of you contribute on a regular basis to documentation, to answer other people's questions, to promote the project within different contexts. And I thank all of you that on a day-to-day basis help to move forward from that level too. So I'm going to talk about a few new Asterisk 15 features. And when I had to go through the list of 900 commits, I had to do a lot of trimming things down. So these are just a few things. There are many, many, many more, but I tried to pick a few things of interest. I categorized them as general platform improvements, some miscellaneous other improvements that I couldn't really categorize. And the last one, of course, is video, WebRTC, and more. Oh my. Some of the platform improvements included GCC 7 related fixes. For those of you that don't do development on a regular basis, GCC is the compiler that generally most open source projects use. There are actually some other options, but GCC is a very popular compiler that's used. And GCC 7 introduced a lot of static analysis tools and things like that, the ability to check code and figure out if there are any like buffer overflows and potential places that could be problematic, and we incorporate a lot of changes related to that. There have been some build fixes for FreeBSD, so that for those of you who aren't aware, Asterisk builds on FreeBSD. Also build fixes for the GNU herd, which I was a little bit surprised about because I haven't used the GNU herd in a very, very long time, and I didn't realize there was a lot of significant development on it still. Also somebody added support for Alembic, which is Asterisk's database migration routines. Oh, actually, is he here? What was your name again? Florin. Yeah, he added support for ms-sql for database migrations for Asterisk for the database schema. And then, of course, I need to talk about this one because we discussed this last year, but PJ Project bundled support is enabled by default. So when you build Asterisk, it will, unless you explicitly disable it, it will download the correct version of PJ Project for it, and it will apply proper patches and things like that so that SIP stack for Asterisk and PJ SIP is the most up-to-date version it can be whenever you build it. So under miscellaneous other improvements, there was a new Asterisk Sounds release, and Rusty Newton spent a lot of time working with Sounds contributors to try to gather them and coordinate that process, and it takes a lot of time to do that since a lot of them aren't paid and they just do it out of their own time. There were some Google OAuth protocol support additions to the XMPP motif channel driver. And last year, it was presented at DevCon, there was somebody who was working on adding stereo audio support to the conf bridge. And they wanted to make it so you could hear somebody in different positions. Like, so if somebody was talking, they were in a different position in the virtual room if you had stereo headphones on. And those patches were merged this last year. There are some debug utilities that we developed as a team to help people who contribute bug-related information. If you have a bug in Asterisk, to help you to retrieve logs and core dumps and things like that properly in the formats that help us to do our job better. And those are the AST core dumper and AST log grabber routines. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the video support that was added. There's something that's called rtcp-mux, which may or may not mean something to you, but it was a big deal to us because when we didn't have it at some point this last year, Chrome made a change, or they started to make, they began the process of sunsetting support for endpoints that didn't support rtcp-mux, and so we had to make sure to add support for that, so we did. We have a convenience option in respjsip.conf called WebRTC that was added. There are a number of things if you're trying to interact with WebRTC-based endpoints that you have to enable in PJ-SIP land in order for it to properly interoperate. And so we added a convenience option that you can set WebRTC equals yes on the endpoint, and it'll add all those options that are needed to make it all work. There's VP9 pass-through support, so Google's new video codec, which uses a lot less bandwidth and will make your CPU start throwing flames out the back because it's very CPU intensive. We added pass-through support to Asterisk for that. We also added an ICE interface blacklist option to rtp.conf. So if you're running WebRTC with Asterisk, and there are particular interfaces on your system that you don't want to advertise as public interfaces for traffic, you can add it to the blacklist. Let me just ask a quick question. Who in this room either utilizes WebRTC with Asterisk in your business or has set it up before? How many hands? All right, there's a lot of hands there. So I'm trying to figure out a good way to ask this without it sounding bad. Was it a happy experience? Was it easy? Okay, so that's kind of how I feel about it too, is there are a lot of different pieces you have to make right, and if they're wrong, it's kind of difficult to figure out which piece you messed up on in terms of like lots of different configuration options. There's some certificates that are involved there that you have to generate and make sure they're spelled right, and then make sure the permissions are right on it so it doesn't complain, and just a lot of stuff there that is really frustrating if you mess up on. And so actually, just to give an early preview, this didn't go into 15.0, but it's worth talking about. But Sean Bright actually added support so that instead of having to pre-generate certificates and then list them in your pjsip.conf, and you can like punch me if I explain this incorrectly, Sean.
Close enough.
Okay. That you don't have to put those in there. They can be dynamically generated by Asterisk on a call per call basis, which is convenient. It's very convenient. It makes it a little bit easier and takes some of the pain out of using WebRTC with Asterisk. And again, as I mentioned before, we unbound the limitations in the core of Asterisk for single stream audio and single stream video, and added renegotiation support. And we talked, I think, sufficiently about that earlier. We also added support for technology called Bundle in the browser. And this was interesting because this allows your calls, WebRTC calls, to connect faster. So if you have multiple video streams or audio streams associated with the call, you don't have to connect. You don't have to go through lots and lots of connect processes for each one of those streams. You can do it essentially one time, and it allows the call to come up quicker. And it also increases potentially the reliability of the call actually being established. We added an echo application to be able to debug multi-stream video without going full selective forwarded unit and AppConf bridge, which I'm about to talk about. And this was convenient for us. It allowed us to isolate parts of the stack and make sure we had the renegotiation capabilities working, and make sure that we had things related to RTP sequence numbers happening correctly, and no issues related to that. Verify there are no issues related to that. And then finally, we added, as mentioned before, SFU support to AppConf bridge. So this is almost the end. Just as a quick reminder, for those of you that are holding on and clutching Asterisk 11 tightly to your chest, 11 was already in security fix mode for the last year. In about 2 or 3 weeks, it's going to stop even receiving security fixes. So it's probably time to move forward. Well, it was time to move forward 6 months ago, but it's definitely time to move forward right now to a new LTS or new version of Asterisk, like 13 or 14 or maybe 15. So I think that's it. And the stipulation about WebRTC, if you have an infrastructure that's running WebRTC with Asterisk and you're running Asterisk 11, it did not receive support for rtcp-mux. And at some point, Chrome is going to decide it's going to stop working with you. And so that's an even better reason to move forward to at least Asterisk 13. And that's pretty much it. Thank you very much. That's where I talk about features and things like that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to have a short question and answer to conclude the conference. And so any questions you'd like to ask an Asterisk developer, we'll do our best to answer. I can't promise that it'll be right if it's too far off for our core domain of expertise, but we'll do our best. Thank you.
And who has that first question? Do you see some hands? Where are we looking? Oh, sorry. Okay. Gotcha. Sorry, Carlos.
Thank you. Is there any plans to extend the real-time configuration interface to include ConfBridge?
Was the question, was that are there plans to extend the real-time configuration to include conf bridge? Did I hear correctly?
Yeah, so you can make conf bridge from the database instead of the files.
Josh, do you want to talk about that?
I'm not aware of any plans currently to do that, but there's something to say that a community member couldn't take care of that. Yeah. Anyone else? I'll just stare at Sean and just make him fill out.
So it sounds like maybe not immediately right now, like there's nobody with intentions to do that, but I can't imagine that that's not something that, or that's something that wouldn't be too difficult to do.
What can you tell us about the new SDP API work that was going on over the summer but didn't get merged into 15?
Oh man, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I was trying to decide if I was going to include that in the list to talk about. So we worked on, we thought we were going to need it to get to SFU, to our goal of SFU support and app conf bridge. We built an abstracted SDP layer so that that we could, so in Asterisk there are a bunch of, if you're not familiar, there are a bunch of things called channel drivers, and each channel driver is Asterisk sort of translation layer to talk or to make phone calls to a different technology like SIP or XMPP or ISDN and things like that. And sorry, I'm like totally pulling a blank here. What's that? Oh yeah, sorry, SDP layer. Sorry, it's been a long day. So the SDP layer was added because we thought, at the very least, there are a number of channel drivers within Asterisk that have to speak SDP, right? So you have the SIP channel driver, the old SIP channel driver, ChanSIP, which has to be able to read SDP and understand it. You have the new channel driver, PJSIP, that has to be able to read SDP and be able to understand it. And then also you have some things that look a little bit like SDP, like there's Jingle. Jingle looks kind of like SDP in a lot of ways, right? And so, and if you look at the way that signaling works in browsers for WebRTC, it really just speaks SDP, like a very stripped down, there's no signaling protocol, there's no SIP or anything like that, you just give it SDP. And so we had the thought at some point somebody is going to want to build a channel driver, probably for Asterisk, that maybe only speaks SDP. And it doesn't want to include SIP in that picture. It wants to be really simple, and all you don't have a SIP stack in your browser or anything like that, and you just throw SDP at Asterisk. And so there were enough potential opportunities there and thoughts that there might be something like that going forward that we decided to build an independent SDP layer for Asterisk that could be used, in new places potentially and in existing places. That project didn't get to the point where we included it in 15.0. But again, back to one of the reasons why 15 is not an LTS, we definitely see the SDP layer moving into 15.x at some point, like being integrated into maybe the PJSIP channel driver and maybe other places. So I hope that answered your questions.
We've got another question just here, and then we'll come to you, Alistair.
Something of a ringer here, possibly in the back. So,
Plan.
this is a question for the developers on the panel. What are you excited about working on over the next year?
Gosh, performance. I went to the ChanSIP versus PJSIP talk yesterday, and I did not leave with a good taste in my mouth. So we're going to try to get PJSIP competitive, closer to pre-Asterisk 13 ChanSIP. That would be my goal for the next 12 months. That, and I have a great idea for a dangerous demo. And I've got 364 days.
That's what you're going to be working over the next year?
Correct, yeah.
It's all about you, isn't it, Sean?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to further video stuff because in Asterisk it's really uncharted territory and it's a brave new world basically. So improving the experience, adding further controls so that people can tweak how the experience is for each of their conference bridges, that sort of stuff. It'll be quite cool in the end, I think.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna echo Josh. I've worked on that some myself over the last year and building up to Asterisk 15, the video work and the stream work, and it's been good. It's been interesting, and it'll be fun to work on that stuff moving forward. So I'd say that's probably what I'm most interested in working on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can, from my perspective, obviously I'm also in the video camp too. You know, we considered 15 to be a first release of this new video support, and by far it is not the end. Like there's so many fun things that we can do with it, and so much different functionality to make it better, to improve the experience. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the different ways that people start to try to utilize it in their networks, and the different feature requests we're going to get to enrich it and enhance it and make it better. So that's kind of.
Thank you. We got another question here now from Alistair.
What is the status of the G729 patents, and are there any plans to include it as a normal codec?
The question was, what is the status with G729 codec, and are there any plans to include it as a normal codec?
As far as I know, I'd heard earlier this year that the G729 codec is patent-free according to, I think, Red Hat. I think they think it's patent-free. And I think probably there's some other people who think it's patent-free as well. That's always a question that you have to kind of ask, because sometimes there are people that aren't part of the standard or the patent pool bodies and things like that. But there's a lot of people that think it's patent-free right now.
Cipro was the answer.
Cipro are the people.
Thanks, Malcolm.
Okay, is there anything you want to say? Okay, any further answer there? No, next question then. Oh, a question near the front. Okay. Here we are, young man.
Yeah, we are using ChainShip since a long, and we are just curious that when it will be deprecated and you are going to remove, is there any timeline to remove ChainShip from the Asterisk?
Oh man, that is just that's the hotbed.
Can you repeat that question just in case people didn't?
Yeah, so he was wondering, he said they've been using ChainShip for a while, and they're wondering if there are plans to deprecate it and when that might happen. So I'll be honest with you, at DevCon on Tuesday, there were a lot of people that were super excited about the thought of deprecating ChainShip. It's a highly, I don't know if it's a general sampling of the users of Asterisk, but the people that were there were super excited about the idea of getting rid of it. I'm not going to say it's going to go away, like, I won't give you a timeline and say that it necessarily will go away in the next year, but there's a ton of momentum to get it, to begin the deprecation process. And so just to clarify what that means, just because a module in Asterisk is deprecated does not mean it's going to be gone. I think that I can't remember, but I think there's 3 years or something like that, or 3 major releases that it has to be in before you can actually remove the code. So you've got probably a few years, even if it was marked as deprecated in the next year or so, you've got a few years of releases to get moved off of it. But sooner is always better rather than later for that.
And one thing you should know that most people should know, or you should know if you compile Asterisk yourself. There's multiple levels of support depending on the module, right? There's core support, extended support, deprecated, and unknown, which none of the ones that we ship are unknown. But if something is in extended support, it's community supported, pretty much only. So ChainShip is in extended support. So that means that it's up to everyone in this room that doesn't work for Digium and myself included, to fix bugs and that sort of thing. And the problem is that's just not happening. So it may not be officially deprecated, and we don't have that line in the module, but it's kind of de facto deprecated because there's no one in the community that's really stepped up to support it. I mean, the last significant patch, I think, was I backported rtcp-mux into ChainShip because I needed it for my business. And that's kind of, I think, why most of us contribute, right? So if there's outstanding bugs or if you want it to continue kind of just to live on, then we would just need someone in the community to step up and maintain it.
Thanks, Sean. That's exactly right. Yep. Yeah, from the majority of the core development team's focus, the majority of us specifically, we focus on ChainPJSIP because it's a lot easier to work on. And when we work on it, one of the problems we ran into with ChanSIP, and I think I touched on it briefly in my presentation, but one of the problems with ChanSIP is it had the tendency that when you would fix a bug, you'd introduce 5 more. Just from the way that the code is structured and the way that things are within it, that's one of the reasons where we realized that we needed to kind of take a step back and start anew with PJ-SIP. And so all new focus on SIP-related efforts are in the PJ-SIP channel driver, which is another reason to move it forward.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Time has marched on, so if you've got any more questions and you would like to ask, come and see these folk. But for now, I've got an announcement to make after this, but for now, let's say a very big thank you to Matt, Kevin, Josh, and Sean. Now, what I wanted to mention to you is some folk have tweeted pictures of a big board that says about come back to Astricon here next year. That is an option, it's not a definite thing. So I just wanted to clarify that with you all. We do have an option to come back next year, and it will really depend on feedback. So you will get a survey after this event, and we really want you to fill in all of that feedback on that survey, and that will tell us whether we should come back here on the dates that we have reserved or whether we should go looking elsewhere. Who's had a great Astricon? Yay! Good. Okay, well, with that, we'll say bye-bye. We'll see you all here next year, and if you'd like to have a picture taken with a developer, there's 4 available here. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.